Hi guys, and welcome back to another DrAce video, and today we're going to be reviewing RiMS Racing, so sit back and enjoy my in-depth look and review of RiMS Racing. So here we are in the Canadian Tire Grand Prix on the Suzuki GSXR 1000RR, but first I want to mention just a quick thank you to Raceway and Nacon for allowing me a chance to play the game not only early, but to then give me a full review copy of RiMS Racing to cover in detail and in depth here today. So a bit of context for you as well, I am playing this on PC, I'm running it with an RTX 2080 Super, I've also got a Ryzen 7 3700X, and finally the RAM that I'm using, the memory, is 32GB at 3600MHz. So if you're not sure what RiMS Racing is and why this separates itself to other bike games, then allow me to explain. RiMS Racing is a motorcycle simulation game with a heavy focus on customizing bikes, analysing the data of the bikes, and just generally being the mechanic for your own bike. So of course you can't be the mechanic without a bike, can you? So here we are in the motorbike selection screen, and those are the 8 motorcycles available in RiMS Racing. And I know what you're thinking, 8 bikes in a game in 2021 is a little bit weak, and I have to agree with you. Although the bikes look fantastic, they handle it differently and handle extremely well, it left me yearning for more. I would love a 600cc motorbike, maybe a 125, just something a little bit more than the 8 bikes we have on selection. I do appreciate RiMS Racing's ethos of quality over quantity, and it does show within the bikes themselves. However, as a gamer, however as a content creator, and however as a fan of bikes in general, you can't help but just to want that little bit more bikes, whether it be 125s or 600s, we just want more bikes. So of course, with that in mind, the quality over quantity does move over to the track selection. 14 tracks in total for RiMS Racing, 21 if you include the reverse variant, and I do believe in today's review there is a free circuit for Bahrain, which is 100% free on Steam right now, so I would check it out. I'm not sure about consoles, because I'm only playing this on PC, but bear that in mind if you want an additional track. Now this track selection is pretty good. I'm a massive fan of the likes of Circuit Zolder, Canadian Tire Grand Prix, Silverstone, Suzuka, Laguna Seca, plenty to choose from, and I must confess, the road circuits didn't interest me at all in the early access, but now I've played them in the full game, I'm quite a fan. The selection of the road circuits are rather enjoyable, so I think I'll definitely be doing a little bit more of those. So with the tracks in mind, and we'll now take a look at the actual conditions configuration of each individual track. So you can choose from being a completely dry and sunny sunset, or a cloudy skies with a bit of a damp track, full on rain, or just a little bit of water on the track such as light rain or a wet circuit. And now I'd really like the addition of the asphalt conditions, because it really does change the complexion of the game. I did a career mode video just a couple of days ago actually, which is coming out very very soon, where the track was drying very very quickly and I had to choose whether to go for a rain tyre or a slick, and it was very very entertaining. And now the usual bits such as the rules configuration, you can choose whether to have qualifying sessions enabled, how long you're going to be qualifying for, how many laps you're going to do. You can do up to 40 laps in the game, I do believe. Change the difficulty of the AI's opponents, the tyre wear if you want it enabled or not, and false starts, whether you want yay or nay, in the sense of abusing the start and getting yourself a fat penalty for going too quicker before the lights. But one thing I do want to mention is that same old adage we mentioned earlier, that quality over quantity. There is only 10 AI competitors in this game, and I'm going to be talking a lot about AI later on, so we'll get back to that, but for the time being, 10 AI competitors is the maximum you can have in a race or qualifying session. So before we jump back on the track and get on to the action, right now I want to just take a look at the actual mechanics of the bike. I have my BMW M1000RR here, and we're going to install a rear thumb brake. Now this game has a plethora, absolute plethora of upgradable parts and components for your bikes. Now from the BMW to the Yamaha to the Suzuki, any bike you want you can upgrade with specific things to upgrade for that motorcycle. Now there is a hell of a lot. I do believe you're talking over 500 components So where we looked at earlier with quality over quantity in the sense of the bikes, this is where the quantity comes in. The sheer amount of components involved in this game, and of course you have the ability to mount and dismount things from your motorcycle. During my early access review I actually titled the name of that video Learning and Racing, and I still feel that's prevalent here today because I'm still learning about the bikes. I don't know everything about motorcycles, and this game has actually helped somewhat by showing me how different parts attach and how different parts are disassembled from their actual motorcycles. And I must say, the assembling and disassembling of bike parts is a good feature, but I do see it becoming a little bit tedious after a while. Now there is an upgrade you can buy in the game that makes everything much quicker, but I actually like that part, but I can understand how the novelty will probably wear off after a good couple of attempts, because during the career mode, the more you play, the more things wear out. But unfortunately, they wear out at quite a rapid rate. Even such things as the mirrors, they deteriorate after a couple of races, regardless whether or not you ended up crashing or not. So there's a few things that still need to be tweaked, but overall, I do enjoy the procedure of unmounting and mounting parts. And you really get to see the bike in its complete nakedness when removing absolutely everything. It is a very entertaining thing, and as a bike fanatic and lover, it is very entertaining. In changing the exhaust, to changing the livery, to changing the fairings. For me, I find it very exciting, and I really do enjoy doing this. Sometimes the quick mounting procedures do get a little bit tedious, and they're pretty much the exact same thing every time. However, I like the feature, but I do understand that some players will probably want to skip this the more they actually play the game. So now it's time to get back on the track and do some racing. So here we are in Silverstone on board the BMW M1000RR, and of course, first things first I want to mention is the AI. This is where the downfalls of the game are going to come in, because unfortunately AI in this game, whether you play on the lowest difficulties to the highest difficulties, are not very good. They are very unintelligent, to be totally honest with you. I did a first impressions video a couple of days ago in Laguna Seca, and I had a hard time playing that with the AI just constantly bashing into me. I didn't include half of it in the video because I was just basically restarting the race every time. But the AI in this one are very odd. They're quite strange in their behaviour. They don't seem to take the same lines as the players, and I would say this is where it really sort of has a downfall on the game itself. Because of all the other components, everything is so cool, changing the bike, doing all the stuff in the garage, but getting onto the track, things get a little bit less interesting. And I would simply say, due to the AI's unpredictability and the way the AI sort of bashes into each other, bashes into you, it's got a lot of work to be done, but I do see a lot of potential, because playing in the early access build and seeing the AI being completely awful and completely unplayable against, things have improved somewhat, but I can only see the future being bright for this studio, and future being bright for the AI as well, because of course, work out the kinks, update some patches, and maybe then we'll get a better AI in the game. But for the time being, the racing itself, let's take away the AI and let's look at the bikes and let's look at the graphics. As far as the graphics goes, I don't mind them too much. I've heard a lot of people be very harsh to this game, saying it looks like a PS3 game or Xbox 360, which I think is a little bit harsh. I would say probably lower end PlayStation 4, middle PlayStation 4, Xbox One, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because graphics don't make the game. The racing makes the game, in my opinion, and the racing itself is pretty good. I like the weights of the bike, I like the feeling of chucking the bikes into some corners. Some corners give you a bit of trouble in the sense of tremendous amount of understeer, but for the majority of it I do rather like it, and I like the addition to the heads-up display. I was seeing different things such as the tyres getting warm, the components wearing out, or even such things as like the lean angle in the bottom right hand corner of your screen. Now this game is dubbed as a motorcycle simulation game with a focus on realism. Now I'm going to have to stop that statement there, because although this game does feel good and there is some aspects of realism to it, I didn't find this game to be as hard as the other bike games on the market right now today. This one seems rather lenient in the sense of riding with full acceleration with no traction control, wheeling with anti-wheelie off. Things didn't seem too bad. Now as far as the actual components go, as when they begin to wear out, yes, the game gets very hard and you have to really focus on maintaining the component strengths and the tyres longevity, but otherwise just racing around starting a race, you can pretty much thrash it as much as you want, as long as you don't go too wide or hold on to the front brake until you're practically on the floor. You're pretty much going to have an easy time with this game. It felt like for me that it was just simply to pick up and play, but I have spent a plethora of hours on other bike games. But as far as this game goes and as far as the realism goes, the sound is where for me is the best part of RiMS racing. The sound in this game is really good. Even with this BMW M1000 RR, it sounds great. And I'll tell you what, I'll shut up for a moment so you can actually hear the sound of this beautiful motorcycle. So just after the Wellington Straight and then hard on the brakes going into Brooklands, you've seen the power of the bike and the sound really matches quite nicely. I must say I do like the sound in this game. It's a bit of an ASMR feel. You can just go onto this game and just listen to the bike. Big thumbs up from me for this one because I really like the sound of the bikes. Now the sound of the bikes is great, but another little nifty feature is the MSC, the Motorbike Status Check. So during a Grand Prix at any point you can check out how your ride is looking right now. An example and context on the screen, we're looking at the rear tyre because I'm curious to see how my rear tyre is holding up after 2.5 laps here in this wonderful British circuit. Now as you can see in detail, the tread control of the actual bike, the left shoulder condition and the right shoulder condition of the tyres themselves. Now you can look at every single part on this bike in detail that will be affected throughout this Grand Prix. So if you had some heavy crashes, you can check out the MSC and have a look to see where exactly the damage has been done and how that is affecting your ride. Now another major positive for RiMS racing is the helmet cam. Now I was not sure how I felt about the helmet cam, but after doing a little bit more laps, I've got to say I'm really impressed with the helmet cam in this game. Now a lot of subscribers have been mentioning to me how good the helmet cam is in this game, and I am a converted fan. You're totally right. The helmet cam in this game is probably the most superior compared to other bike games. It feels great. The movement on the motorcycle feels really natural. The weight of the bike is depicted really well in the helmet cam, much better than it is in the third person perspective. Now don't get me wrong, I still adore the third person perspective and I will probably play the majority of my time in third person, but coming into the private testing and just enjoying the helmet cam by myself, it's been a great experience, and most of my experience from this game has come from just doing the private testing, riding the bikes alone, just going around the tracks and chucking in time trials, because unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, the AI is not that great. There's also another little negative within the racing of this game. So take away the AI, race alone, unfortunately the negative still comes in and it's still there. And that unfortunately is the texture popping and frame rate dips in this game. I have a good PC, I mentioned it early on at the start of the video, and unfortunately I'm still plagued with issues in the sense of really low frame rates from 144Hz down to about 30, and it's really jarring, especially in the helmet cam. It kind of made me feel a little bit sick sometimes because of the frame rate dips. Third person perspective, I didn't really feel sick, but I still felt a little bit irritated by the drops because this is 2021. The game doesn't look exactly that difficult to run, but unfortunately plagued with a few bugs in the sense of frame rate issues and graphical errors. But guys, I guess that is pretty much it from me. I think I've covered everything that will really give you an indication of whether or not to buy this game. One last little mention is to do with the lean angle of the bikes, regarding simulation and realism. This game does a little bit better than everything else in the sense of when it's wet and when the track conditions aren't very good. Lean angle really comes into its own, and I didn't really realise this until towards the end of my experience playing RiMS racing. And the experience being that if you lean a lot into certain corners, you will crash. And now in the wet, you have to replicate the real sort of feeling of riding in the wet. You're not going to go down to 50 degrees lean angle or 60 degrees. So if you try and do that in the wet surfaces, the bike will drop automatically. And I didn't really understand that at first, but thankfully some of the subscribers mentioned when I was in the Andretti hairpin in Laguna Seca, they mentioned why I kept crashing, and that's because I was carrying too much lean angle. So if you can position the motorcycle better, move the analog stick not completely over, but just maybe 3/4 of the way, you'll experience a much better handling. And I will be doing some guides on this game because I do feel like it's appropriate to help out some of the guys and do what I can to help you guys get up to the level of myself and maybe even beyond that. But for the time being, I guess that is going to be it from the review. I've really enjoyed my time with RiMS Racing. This game does have some bugs, and unfortunately I'm not sure whether I recommend it or not. The positives in this game are great. The more I've spent time playing it, the more I've enjoyed it. My initial reactions to this game were very, very negative. I didn't really enjoy it. It felt like nothing had been changed since the early access. But the more I've played this game, the better it has become. Now, I'm not sure whether I would say I recommend go out and buying it today, because this game does have a lot of flaws in the sense of frame rate dips and graphical errors. And of course, the lack of motorcycles and tracks is a downfall. But ultimately for me, I've enjoyed my time and I'll continue to play it nonetheless. So guys, I really hope you've enjoyed this video and I hope you found it helpful. If you have, let me know in the comments section down below. A like and a subscribe helps out the channel a hell of a lot, so I would appreciate if you would do that. And upon that note guys, hit the notification bell if you really enjoyed the content, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching guys, and ciao for now. Oh hi, didn't quite see you there. Good to see you're still here. If this video didn't quite set your appetite, then why not watch some more DrAce content by clicking the video shown on screen now. Furthermore, if you would like to follow me on social media, you can do so now with the links down in the description. Consider subscribing so you don't miss a single DrAce video.